Hi, and welcome to GLP's 10 out of 10. And today we have with us industry legend, let's call him, Steve Cohen. Steve has had an incredible career throughout at least 3 decades and counting of lighting and production design, for live concerts, television broadcasts, feature films, and a wide range of special events. His list of live touring credits includes a who's who of rock and roll. People like Van Halen, Elton John, Justin Timberlake, the Eagles, Lenny Kravitz, Christina Aguilera, and many more. He's also worked with Billy Joel for the past 40 years or so, and has become part of the record-breaking team that have created the longest residency in history at Madison Square Gardens in New York, and which continues to add shows to its run. Steve is also a fine artist and has had his work displayed at a number of exhibitions. He's won multiple awards for his work across the years and is truly, as I said, a legend of the entertainment lighting industry. Welcome, Steve Cohen.
Hello, Mark.
How are you?
I think that's, we can wrap it up now. I guess,
That's it. Just sit back.
I always find an industry interesting, you know, when you put together 40 years in the business, like which credits, you know, you would select to list, because, you know, some of them I wouldn't mention and some of them I would rather you had mentioned. So
maybe we'll get to some of the ones that you don't want to mention a bit later with these questions. But I mean, it is a phenomenal career. I mean, for anybody just looking through your website, it's just endless. It's incredible. So yeah, congratulations.
and that website, unfortunately, that website hasn't been updated in probably, I don't know, 7 years maybe. I think
right.
I just you know, I stopped updating it for no reason. I was just not using it for traffic, and I wasn't using it to advertise anything, and I wasn't doing it to try and get work. So I look at it now and I go, oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happened post that website that hasn't been up there. So
right, the legend continues.
It's not 3 decades, dude. It's 4. It's 4.5 decades. I started in 1973. So
right,
old man in this business.
There you go. So we've got our 10 questions that we're asking everybody. So let's try and kick it off. Going way back to the beginning. What was your first show as a designer?
My first show as a lighting designer,
yes,
was a show at the Wilshire Ebell Theater on Wilshire Boulevard. Obviously, It's Magic. It was I think it was 1972, maybe.
Okay.
72. I was like 19 or 18. I had become friends with some people who, one of them happened to be the assistant for Harry Blackstone Jr., the magician, and they were doing a show. I think it was a benefit, and they asked me to, because I'd done high school theater, they asked me to light that show. And it was interesting because I lit that show, but I also learned how to hide some of the things that magicians don't like to be seen. So I learned how to use lighting to kind of misdirect your eye, kind of when I did those things. So yeah, so that was my first show. I think it was my first professional show. I think I got paid $50.
That's fantastic. Back in 1972. So across all of those years, across those 40 plus years, our next question is, what's the best or the worst, if you like, the Spinal Tap moment, or the most, you know, kind of embarrassing situation that you're willing to tell us about that's happened? Is there one that stands out?
The most embarrassing moment?
Yeah, or kind of what's this? Have you had a Spinal Tap moment on one of the shows where you've been?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did. I think I do it. I designed a set with my partner at the time, this guy Tom Strand up in San Francisco, for Don Henley, and it was the second half of a tour, and we had designed this model where the idea of the show was that it was a crashing in of styles of the Pueblo meets the San Fernando Valley Freeway overpass, because it was, Don Henley's Southern, Texas roots mixed in with, him and being a California guy. And it missed the mark. It missed the mark by a big mark. And the irony of it was that when I saw it built, I was really embarrassed. And Henley came in, and I think Irving Azoff at the time, and they walked in and said, "Oh, we like it. It's fine. It's kind of weird, but it's okay." But I was kind of like cringing the whole time. I then did an updated version of that the next half of the tour, and the sound engineer at the time, great guy, Trip Califf, Clare Brothers sound engineer for Queen and all those people, very boisterous. And he walked in and saw these new backdrops that I put in, and he said, "Wow, it looks like the men's room at the Casbah." And I was, yeah, it was the early set design stuff that I'd done that, it was a little embarrassing.
Just didn't always come out to plan.
No, I'm sure there's other ones, but like all embarrassing moments, I don't remember them. They're very, 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 very low into the memory banks.
Oh, there we go. We'll take that one. That's great. That's great. Over the years, what do you think is the best piece of advice that anyone's ever given you, professionally or otherwise?
Well, I talk about this a lot, when I talk about my relationship with Billy Joel, and one of the things that we talked about very early on, I started with him, in 74. I started a lighting company, and he was one of the first clients that I landed as a one-man operation. And, I did that first tour with him. And I remember a couple of times where we would be sitting down talking about work and talking about, what he expected and about what, this whole thing was for all of us. And remember, we're playing high schools, we're playing college gymnasiums and theaters and small theaters and selling 1,200 seats and that kind of stuff. And he said to me that the most important thing is that you show up and do the best possible version of be the best possible version of yourself. Do the best job you can. He said, if you're going to drive a bus, drive the bus the best way a bus driver can. If you're going to show up, do it the best to your possible ability. And then if you fuck up, own it, because it's much easier to get forgiven when you admit your faults.
Yeah.
And I think that work ethic, that was the baseline of my work ethic and has been my work ethic ever since. Sometimes I can be really good and sometimes I can be average, but it doesn't matter, because if I'm putting in maximum effort, then I'm going to be okay. Then I'm doing the best I can.
Right. You're gonna get through.
And, it's interesting because that advice coming from Billy, who arguably has one of the most successful careers of anybody in the music business, we're reaping the benefits of that work ethic. He's reaping the benefits of that work ethic today. He's 70 years old and is more popular than he's ever been. And it's all been because of the fact that he shows up and does the best does the best possible thing he can when he's doing that job.
Right. Time after time after time. No, that's a fantastic piece of advice for sure. What would you say is your proudest achievement throughout your career so far?
I don't know. My work, my jobs are like my children. Like the latest one is always my favorite, and so it's kind of hard. There are three red letter things in my past, that red letter moments in my past. Certainly when we brought our show, the Billy Joel show, to the Soviet Union in the 80s, and we were the first big production to tour, the two cities in Russia, and really, become part of a cultural change, and realize that these people that were supposedly my enemy for my whole childhood turned out to be no different than my next door neighbors. And in fact, even more loving and more curious and more warm than many people I ran into in my neighborhood. That was really a big thing. The other moment is clearly the closing of Shea Stadium. We did 2 shows with Billy Joel where we closed Shea Stadium, and we filmed it, and I shot a documentary about it. And so that whole experience was one of the prouder moments in all of our careers and all of our working relationship. And funnily enough, this last Eagles show that I designed is a standout moment for me because I have such history with Don Henley that to come back after the Eagles get reformed, after Glenn passed away, to be able to be handed that job with some very, shall we say, opinionated and specific artists. I'm pretty proud of that. I think that show is an example of a culmination of a lot of the craft that I developed over the years, which is incorporating live imagery and making lighting, be really an organic part of the show and not having any elements of lighting being lighting for lighting's sake. So I'm pretty proud of that show. Yeah.
That's pretty phenomenal. All 3 examples. I mean, spanning generations, but also spanning, as you said, culture-defining moments as well,
Yeah.
which is brilliant. What do you do in your downtime amongst all these shows?
I paint.
Right.
I cook.
Huh.
I live a life. I mean, I'm very fortunate. My career has developed at a pace that has, for the most part, paralleled my life and the way I like to live my life. I think that there were times in my 40s where I was more ambition driven than I was in my 50s and now. But it was interesting, when I turned 40, there was a whole shift in the industry. We're talking 20 some odd years ago, and a lot of new designers were coming up, and there was a lot of interest in younger minds and younger eyes to execute. So there was a lot of calls that I didn't get. I managed to be involved with some, new cutting edge stuff during that period of time. But my downtime now is just living life, and I'm in a position where I can really enjoy it. So
yeah, just be relaxed and enjoy the time away from.
And I mean, I started painting. Look, I started painting about 15 years ago. I turned 50, and I got a set of oils and paints for my 50th birthday because I'd never done it before. And, slowly, I think I've, produced 250 canvases by now, but there's, sold a couple of pieces in the past couple of years, but I really do it as a meditative practice. And look, I've been painting with light my whole life, so why not use another medium? But it's interesting to be able to create without having a requirement to sell it. And having it not be necessary, there's no deadlines. I can be very prolific and do 3 or 4 paintings in a week, or I can work on one for 3 or 4 months. So it's really good, and I'm getting better at it, which is really great.
Are you self-taught?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know. I've never. The thought of taking a class has always been intriguing to me, but I always think I'd show up and they go, "Get out of here! You don't know what you're doing,"
You've worked obviously around the world and so many different venues. Is there one venue that particularly stands out as being a favorite?
Yeah, Madison Square Garden, hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down. Madison Square Garden is the center of the rock and roll touring universe to me.
Right.
I've seen shows there from my earliest, my 20s, and my first real arena gig was a show there that I got hired at the last minute by the promoter, and I was 22 or 23, I think, at the time, and the head of the IBEW took me under his wing, and the head of the IA took me under his wing, and Patrick, the great icons of the industry, Patrick Stansfield and Michael Ahern were part of the promoter team, and they said, "Hey, stick with us, kid. We'll teach you how to do this the right way." And the Garden became my home, really my home arena.
Right.
Billy's done 100 and Billy Joel has done 120 some odd, or 118 shows lifetime, and I've been there for every one of them.
Right.
But I've probably done 40 or 50 shows there with other, I've probably done 160, 170 shows in that building, and nothing feels like that building.
Yeah, it is absolutely landmark venue. Yeah, good choice. Obviously, so much is going on at the moment with the lockdown, and you're spending a lot of time indoors and everything, with presumably some music as well. Is there one artist or one record that you would absolutely always want to have with you if you have to go through this again?
Oh yeah, Frank Sinatra live at the Sands.
Okay, great.
I could put that on and it could play in a loop forever.
Great, that's it. That didn't take long to answer that one. Didn't take long to think about. Wow. Okay, so spinning way back into the start of your career. If you could wind time back and go and talk to the teenage Steve Cohen and give him one piece of advice, what would that be?
I tell him not to worry about it.
Mm.
I spent a lot of time in my youth in fear of what was going to happen, and thinking that it would all evaporate, that someday, that one day, the dogs want to eat.
Right.
That one day it would hang on a second. Curtis, can you please, we'll edit this back,
Right.
All right. So the question is, if I could tell my younger self
One piece of advice. Yeah. What would it be?
And that would be not to worry about the future. I spent a lot of time in fear that, one day it would all evaporate. I started in an industry that didn't have any rules. It didn't have much history. And who knew how long it was going to last? And I spent a lot of time worrying about that. And I think I wasted a lot of time worrying about that. And I think I probably drank too much because of all of that. So that's what I would tell myself. I've thought about this. Would I do it differently? No, I wouldn't do it differently. I mean, this is my life, and it unfolded, the way it unfolded, and I've had, ups and downs, but it's all been a ride that I wouldn't trade for anything.
That's the best answer then. Absolutely, no regrets.
No.
If you had the opportunity to sit down with one person for a cup of coffee and a conversation, somebody alive or dead, who would you choose?
I think Leonard Bernstein.
Okay.
Great. I think that his mind was, I would love to look into his eyes and see that passion. I think he's, I think he's one of those people. He's an enigma to me. He's a conductor that ingests the classics, and interprets them better than any conductor, I think, alive or dead.
Right.
And then he can turn around and write West Side Story. Like where is that? You know, you listen to West Side Story today, and it is the most complex and subtle piece of music ever, and it just keeps unfolding like a great piece of art, and I keep hearing things that I've never heard before. So yeah, I think he was a great character, and I think he was probably full of life.
Right.
And he comes from an era that I really sort of wish I was born into. I really wanted to, you know, live through the 40s and 50s. So, you know, as an adult. So, yeah, I think that's who I would, if I was to pick one.
Right. It's a tough question, but good choice. Good choice. We're up to our final question already. And this one, yeah, I know it doesn't take long. This one's just a bit of a, you know, a fun one, an off the wall one. So you're going to get a phone call in a minute from the US Olympic team. And they're gonna call you up, and it could be for the winter games or it could be for the summer games. But the question is, what sport are they going to call you up for? What's the one thing you'd ever go at?
God, I hope they don't call. I can't do anything. I can't throw a ball. I can't hit a golf club. What sport would they would call me? They would call me up to be a commentator for, you know, the luge, so I could make jokes. I mean,
All right, there you go. There we go. All right, so commentator. We'll take that as a commentator then.
Commentator, yeah.
Come on with the team spirit. Steve, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for finding some time for us. We really appreciate it. And it's been wonderful to talk with you. And I look forward to seeing you again in person very soon.
Yeah, thank you for everything. I look forward to, you know, shining lights in people's eyes again. You know, I mean, I miss that. So
that's right. I'm sure they do too. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye.